Welcome to People and Profit. I'm Kate Moody. Coming up, thousands of cancelled flights and warnings of more to come. Will staff shortages keep air travel from taking off? Has the pandemic changed what tourists are looking for? We'll be diving into the new trends and the impact of rising inflation. And after a roller coaster 2 years, theme parks near Paris hope to be back on solid ground, with attendance figures booming. Huge queues, delays, and cancelled flights. Travelers, especially in Europe and the US, have faced widespread disruption as their summer travel season kicked off. On a single day in June, 4% of global flights were called off. The chaotic scenes at airports are the result of several factors, including staff shortages. At the start of the pandemic, airlines, airports, and related sectors cut hundreds of thousands of jobs, and they've struggled to recruit fast enough as restrictions have eased and demand surged. One study estimates there were 2.3 million fewer people working in the aviation sector around the world in September 2021 than there were before the pandemic. That could continue to ground the industry's recovery for months to come.
The evidence that we have today suggests that we will still have a disconnect between supply and demand going into the fourth quarter and even potentially into the first quarter as airlines and airports rebuild for the strong recovery that we're seeing.
Well, to get a better sense of where the broader tourism industry stands, let's bring in Adrien Lanotte from the MKG Group. You've been keeping a close eye on the sector, of course. It seems that demand for travel has really soared as pandemic restrictions are lifted around the globe.
Yes, actually, we've seen really a surge in demand over the past few months. It's been coming by steps. First, we've seen domestic travel bounce back in the US, in Europe as well, already in the second semester of 2021. Then we've had European clientele coming back, and now we have international travel really booming once again, except with Asia, which has been pretty delayed, but North America and Europe exchanges are going up. So demand is strong, and it's leisure-driven. That's one of the key elements of the latest months. But business is also making its comeback slowly.
We have, though, seen a huge surge in inflation as well. Everything from fuel to ticket prices to food is more expensive. To what extent might high inflation derail that recovery?
Well, first, you have to keep in mind that for two years, more than 2 years, people had restrictions and people bought stuff and now they want experience. So there's part of a psychology into that. But what has been driving the inflation trend in the hospitality industry is that you have rising costs. When clients get into the hotel and they say they pay $100 for their night, actually for a hotel, they will have to bear costs that include staff, energy. Staff would be $33 out of your 100, and energy would be 3 to 5, generally speaking. So these are costs that have been delivering double-digit increases in recent months. So that's something that you want to factor in. All the more so that it's really an issue for hospitality to retain staff, to get people to work in the industry, and to service clients. So these are costs you can control. So you want to push some back towards customers, and customers actually have been accepting because they understand that it's a constraint, and it's also tied to a broader increase in rates.
If we look at a country like Turkey in particular, it has one of the highest levels of inflation in the world, about 70% earlier this year. But foreign visitors have really flocked there, surpassing their pre-pandemic levels. Does that help to offset the impact of inflation on a local economy as well?
To look at inflation in a given country, you also have to look at its feeder markets. In the case of Turkey, many of its hospitality clients are coming from either the Eurozone or the British pound. So basically, the inflation of the local currency isn't directly felt because at the same time, you have changes in exchange rates that balance that effect. So actually, it's not that obvious that local inflation is having an impact on behaviors of other feeder markets. But it's true that it drives up costs, and it changes the environment in which hotels operate. And the thing is, the pickup in demand is also helping these economies get revenue, get business back again, get jobs naturally. And so it's somehow a way to alleviate the macro impact because you have people grabbing more revenue from foreign sources. So in that way, it's a help for the local people, but it doesn't have a direct impact on the inflation itself because, actually, it's something that is not that correlated and balanced by the effect of exchange rates.
Let's look at France in particular. It's the most visited country in the world. The tourism industry is a huge part of the economy here. How has the industry fared here since the pandemic hit?
Well, in France, just to give a broader context, you have to understand that COVID has really an impact that was really unprecedented. Hotels fell to just 1/3 of their standard revenue at the height of in 2020. Again, in 2021, revenue was 43% below pre-COVID standards. So even in 2021, when the general economy was picking up, because the first semester was tough, it's bounced back a little later. But since the beginning of 2022, and especially since March, I would say, there's been really a shift. So we are now actually well above. In May, for instance, Europe as a whole closed the month with more than 6% increases in revenue. And that's been driven by rates, as we've discussed, but there's also a pickup in demand and room night spent.
Has the pandemic changed what travelers are looking for? Are they trying to perhaps avoid mass tourism more than they were before?
Generally, I would say yes. And we can sense that when we look at micro markets or specific products, a good example is cycling. The cycling tourism, it's something that you do in your neighborhood, in your own country, or in nearby regions. And we see that there is a premium in terms of revenue for hotels with such equipment. And same thing with the destination profile. Nature-oriented destinations, vineyards, seaside resorts, all have been picking up. It's both a rebound in leisure demand, which is a general trend, and that also applies to the mass tourism. But there's also some elements that, yes, tend to highlight that we've seen a change in behaviors, and new destinations, new products are being asked for in getting traction in terms of consumer demand.
We know that airlines and the aviation sector, but also other parts of the hospitality industry, are really struggling to recruit people. They've got huge staff shortages. What can be done to make the industry seem more attractive to potential recruits?
Well, it's complex because it's an industry where you have to bring service, and the idea in Europe in particular, service is not something that has been culturally valued for a while, and naturally, wages are a key element that needs to be addressed by the industry, and it's really underway. You have double-digit increase in minimum wages in many countries, and people are trying to lure new people in the industry as well.
What do you think will be the lasting impact of the pandemic, of these 2 years of crises, on the tourism industry? Are people taking travel less for granted than they used to?
Yes, and they're enjoying it much more than they used to, I think, especially at the moment. One of the trends that's been changing is how we behave when we travel, and a shift in corporate demand. That's also something that is really very important because it's key to airlines, with all the business class and all the travel that have been the core driver of profit. Same thing with hotels, because you have 7 days in a week and 4 of them are dominated by business demand. And this has changed a little bit. So you have people that are willing to travel less often, but maybe a little longer, and also to mix uses. So they will come, for instance, with an occasion, so a major event, make their own meeting, do their personal stuff. So it's a rise of pleasure. It's a rise of all the hybrid products, and all the hybrid consumption patterns are here with us to stay, I think.
Adrien Lena, thank you so much for joining us on France 24 today.
Thank you, Kate.
Well, one of France's most beloved comic books has given rise to one of the country's most popular theme parks. Located just outside Paris, the Parc Astérix attracted 2.3 million visitors the year before the pandemic hit. Now, with COVID restrictions lifted, it's hoping for a summer season worthy of the Gauls themselves. Yinka Oyatade has more.
Long snaking queues for rides, large crowds enjoying parades, and fully booked restaurants are all making a comeback to France's Parc Astérix.
It's so nice to be able to experience thrills again.
We can live again, we can breathe, and frankly, COVID can stay wherever it is.
After 2 years of pandemic disruption, the park is seeing a spike in visitors once again. The highly anticipated summer season accounts for 60% of the attraction's annual turnover. This year, though, the surge has come early, with the park's hotels nearly fully booked in June.
In April, we had a 95% occupancy rate in our 3 hotels. It's great numbers. It was the same for May, and the hotel is filling up again in June. We're also confident about July and August. It's really cool.
There is one problem reigning on Astérix's parade. A national shortage in seasonal workers means the park is struggling to find enough staff to cope with the crowds.
Globally, there are around 1,300 full-time staff, but we still need to recruit 100 people specifically to work in the hotels and restaurants. They're both under pressure.
It's a race against the clock to fill positions, but with the right magic potion, theme parks in France could make a splash and see record numbers of visitors in 2022.
Well, that's all for now. Don't forget you can catch all our shows on the France 24 website or as a podcast wherever you usually listen. You can also get in touch on social media with your comments and questions. Until next time, thanks for watching.